In this video, we're going to use the frame-by-frame animation tools to plan and sketch out a rough version of the scene we'll later animate using the rig we built. To give you a little sneak peek, this is the 3D background I'll be using for the final scene. It's just a section of hallway leading to a library. I don't need to bring this into Moho quite yet. I exported some images and made them into a simple 2D background that we'll use for the sketching out phase. This keeps our file simpler and better performing during the planning phase of the scene. So I'll just make a new image layer and browse for the background. Now that's in, let's set up the frame by frame group. I want to use image layers, and I want their size to be the same as the background image so I can draw anywhere I want over top of the background. I can see the dimensions of the background image here in the file browser. And I'm actually going to make the width and height of my images a little bigger. Then I'll make a folder to store the image layers in. And there we go. Now I have the first big wide image layer here to draw on with the bitmap tools. Now I want to fade out the background image to make it easier to draw over. However, there's a problem if I just go to the layer settings and lower the opacity. It looks like it will work, but when I actually draw, the stage doesn't render the opacity effect while I'm making the strokes. It updates once I'm done. So I'll set the opacity back to normal, and instead put it in a group, and then make a vector layer over top of the background layer. Then I'll draw a white vector rectangle over top of everything and lower the opacity of that vector layer. Now when I draw on my frame by frame layers, the background stays faded. Next thing I'm going to do to set up is import the model sheet for the character and then scale it down to the appropriate size. This will help me keep the character's size consistent as we make different drawings in different parts of the scene. Then we're all set up and we can start drawing out the poses for our animation. I'm using a rough sketching brush to roughen the character. The idea of this scene is that Betsy is a bit of a teen detective and she's sneaking into the library to look for clues. So she's going to quietly sneak down the hallway, and then when she gets to the library she'll spot a clue. I'm not worried about drawing her super accurate to the model since these are going to get replaced by the rig in the final anyway. I just want them to be clear enough to indicate the pose that's necessary at this frame on the timeline, so I can match it when I pose the rig. I'm just trying to put in enough keyframes and in-between poses to make it clear how she's supposed to be moving when she sneaks. Some of these poses are pretty extreme and might push the limits of our rig's range of motion, but we can modify the rig or adjust things by hand if necessary. We don't want to let the fact that we're using a rigged character limit us too much. So at this point, she pauses cautiously before going into the library. I'm consulting the model sheet here to make sure she's sized correctly. So now the clue she notices is going to be on a globe, so I'm going to draw that on a separate layer in the foreground here. She's going to walk in, look around the space a little bit, and do a take where she steps back in her tracks. And then she's going to walk forward to the globe in the foreground. Great! So that's the end of the shot. Now to make it easier to see, I'm going to go back and with my brush set to draw behind mode, I'm going to paint in the character with white. Now we can just press play to see the scene play out. Cool. Now, if we wanted, we could just keep going and draw in even more in between poses. And if you wanted to do this as an entirely hand-drawn scene, it would just be a matter of doing clean-up color drawings over top. And of course, we still need to pan the camera with the character so she's actually in frame for the whole animation. We'll be working with the camera more in the next video. So with this 2D animation as our guide, we're ready to start building the final scene that will be animating using the character rig in a 3D environment. We'll do that in the next set of videos. I'll see you there.